Okay, so I thought I'd just record something because that way, it's probably a little bit easier. So, obviously, or maybe not obviously, pitch and resonance are two distinct things, right? So, um, it's kind of harder to change pitch in isolation in my experience, but like, right, that would be a high pitch. My voice doesn't want to comply right now because I'm tired. But like, and that. Oh, so this would be a low pitch and would be a high pitch, right? Um, so what's resonance? So some of the other people in this kind of chat in the post kind of explained resonance is like something that changes when size changes. And what I'm going to do is flick the size of my throat, the side of my throat, while holding its space in a big size. Then I'm going to start shrinking it. Big. Small, small, right? So as we kind of change that, right? As we change size, then we see some changes in the sound, right? So the relation of between pitch and resonance is one of the important ones. The other kind of variable that's also important is this idea of vocal weight. So would be a low vocal weight, right? It's kind of soft, and ooh would be a high vocal rate, right? So what does it sound like when resonance is kind of shifted about? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose a single pitch, right? I'm going to choose that pitch, and I'm just going to change the resonance of the sound. So first I'm going to do it in a way that doesn't change really the kind of like masculinity or femininity of the sound. Right? What I'm now going to do is I'm going to change the size that's kind of like relative, right? And I'm going to shrink the space and make all the kind of like resonant frequencies go up, right? So, ooh, oh, ow, ow. And then if I speak with a sound like this, then it sounds much more feminine, right? And it sounds like this, right? And there's kind of this one other kind of variable that's kind of like lurking about, right? So you might notice, right, that this sounds kind of hollow, right? Um, it sounds kind of like there's like not much going on. If I kind of go down lower in pitch, then it still sounds a little bit hollow, right? And that's the intersection that we hear between weight and resonance, right? So you can kind of, if the space is really big and the weight is low, if the is like soft, right, then you get this kind of like, kind of Toby quality, right? But if you shrink the space, then that kind of goes away, right? But what you can also have is kind of like, if the weight is high, right, higher weight and the space is large, then that sounds normal.
And if you like shrink the space and like, you know, um
Right, if you shrink the space and keep the weight high, then sometimes that can like sound a little bit kind of like over the top. You've kind of like missed the mark. But then again, you've kind of got like other intersections, right?
you know, so uh this might not be the best rendition of this voice I've ever done, but you might not be surprised to see something like this coming from an older woman's voice. Um, it's got this kind of like fry sound. The weight is still relatively high, but the resonance, the size of my throat is also very small. Right? And you kind of have those mix of variables, right? That kind of like all play together and produce different sounds when they're kind of moved in different places. So obviously resonance sounds different if it's moved around at different places. So I kind of demoed to begin with like oh, I, oh, right? If I kind of take the pitch lower, oh, sorry, that's probably a bit low for me. Oh, 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 ow, ow, oh, 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 right? Maybe even a little bit lower. Oh, 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 ow, ow, oh, 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 ow, ow, right? You can see what that kind of sounds like changing a kind of a range of sounds. Um, so when we change between different vowels, when we change between like different
stuff like that. We are changing resonance, but we're not really doing it in the same way. We're kind of like scaling ratios between different resonant frequencies up or down to kind of like make them more masculine sounding or more feminine sounding. So if we say change from ew from like an e to an oo, right? We're basically just changing the size of our mouths and by moving the tongue, and that has the effect of like making the ratio change. So e to oo means that the kind of like throat space sounds stays the same, right? Um, the the number for the throat space, the frequency for the throat space stays the same, but as you go from an e to an oo, the mouth space goes down. So like the difference between the two numbers goes down. And what you can do then, right, is if you move those kind of like numbers up or down, oh, 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 so if I'm here, right, then the ratio between like, the mouth space and the throat space is kind of the same, right? Or like the frequency values coming from that are the kind of the same, just scaled up or down. So that's probably more info than you wanted, I guess. But it's easier to think of resonance, generally speaking, as just kind of being like or size. Resonance slash size is kind of the same concept, and kind of just trying to block them in as certain vowel sounds. I did give you a little bit more info on like, hey, so mouth space roughly correlates to like the second resonant frequency, or the second lowest, right? With the first resonant frequency, the biggest space relating to the kind of like throat space, the biggest cavity, right? So as we see the kind of size change, those numbers go up if you shrink the space, and they go down if you make the space larger. So hopefully that gives you a big enough kind of explanation of that stuff, maybe, possibly. And yeah.